With the amazing recent episode of Mammon's magnificent mid-season special, I wanted to discuss how the show portrays the idea of being famous in hell, something the show deals with as a whole with a few of its characters, but which has been getting special attention recently in the Fizzarolli subplot. Now, what's interesting about Hell of a Boss is that it isn't just exploring fame, but the concept of fame in hell itself, which is mostly a mirror to what fame is like in real life. Now, obviously, any show in any location or with any premise would attack fame through its own lens, but the setting of hell has always allowed for very special commentary on its subjects. While you can portray fame as being toxic and dark in any human setting, making the same story take place in hell reminds the audience that even fame can feel like a sort of punishment. So let's break that down. But before we do, go check out my new animated series, Garnet. It's about a magical girl getting ready to retire and her magic talking cat, voiced by sarcastic chorus.
Let's keep things simple, you know? Rescue some cats stuck in some trees or something.
The cat's in a tree, it's because we want to be there. Leave us the fuck alone.
It was a fun project to make, and we just opened a Patreon account to try and fund more episodes, shorts, and other projects. Consider being among the first to donate. Now, hell is a very class-based society, with there being a clear hierarchy of who is on top and who are the lowest of the low. A key ingredient in oppressing any population is to always be dangling the possibility of escape over them, the idea of someone from the low class somehow managing to rise to be one of the elites. This is generally done through marrying into royalty, as a lot of our older fairy tales like Cinderella display, and then of course there's the possibility of fame. There are a lot of different ways to become famous in hell, and even the lowest of the low like the imps can do this, but it's hard for any given demon to do this on their own. In Mammon's mid-season special, it was revealed that Fizz is only as famous as he currently is because of an American Idol type competition that Mammon holds each year, where the winner gets the fame and wealth that Fizzarolli has enjoyed over the last decade or so now. Before this, Fizzarolli was known and famous, but not exactly famous in the way he is now. Fizzarolli was the star at Buxo's Family Circus for sure, and people at clowning events like Mammon's show might also be aware of him as Creepso was, but even then, he was nervous that he wouldn't be able to grab Mammon's attention in the contest, let alone in general. The elites of hell already hold the power to advertise anything that seems to have mass appeal, so all they have to do is find whatever demon carries the image or brand that people latch onto, and then milk that for as much as they can. Mammon in particular has taken Fizzarolli and turned him to everything from a kid's cartoon mascot to an adult pleasure bot. While others like Asmodeus may have a bit more class in how they approach their business, all of them have naturally made empires out of exploiting the lower classes, who all only live for a short period of time, and all would jump at the opportunity to be one of the few in their species to enjoy a life of fame and supposed luxury. But a lot of the luxury is essentially a lie. While Fizz has an extravagant life, it is far from stress-free, with him constantly being on edge because of his performance. The nature of his fame with the annual contest that Mammon hosts means that each year Fizz risks losing everything he has been building so that someone else can get all of the same brand deals he once had. This is not much different than the stress real-life artists face when, say, making a TV series, where they only get renewed once a year and never know how long they will have work for. Fizz and many other famous people can take their acts elsewhere and are guaranteed to make at least a little money, I would imagine, but seeing just how much of your audience won't follow you when you go somewhere else or even just try something new can be very terrifying. And a lot of his personal life is staked on that as well. Asmodeus was a very comforting partner to Fizz, insisting not just that he loves him for who he already was, but that Fizz really is the big superstar that everyone says he is, something Fizz must never feel like. Fizz is famous, of course, and he is a superstar, and people must always be saying this, but he never feels this way because all he really gets to feel is isolation. Isolation from everyone except for the Demon King he loves. Fizz is so famous that all he ever feels like is one of the many products that are made to look like him, with there being countless sentient robots in hell pretending to be him, performing at children's venues, as well as being personal love dolls to adults. Mammon promised to make the winner of his contest everything from a Saturday morning cartoon to a toy, and what Fizz is seen as more than anything else is just a caricature of himself. The closest most people get to seeing the real him is a distant circus or nightclub performance, where he's on stage and far away. Even when close up, he's covered in paint and costumes that leave virtually nothing left of him. We know that because of the tragic accident started by Blitz that Fizz is covered in white burn scars, with the natural red on his nose being saved, giving him a natural clown-like appearance. But in the recent episode, we saw that Fizz still paints over himself quite a bit to get that authentic clown look. In addition to this, Fizz lost most of his limbs, and is only able to get around thanks to technology originally built for love bots, like robo-Fizzes that would later be modeled after him. The only person who ever sees behind all this is Osmodeus, and even then, Fizz likes to keep himself more covered for natural reasons. There are millions of people who would love to date Fizz on the surface, but would be likely off-put by the reality of him without the paint and makeup on. What everyone knows of Fizz is essentially a cartoon version of him used for products, and the distant painted image of him on stage. They would prefer his love dolls to him because those offer the clean, sanitized version of Fizz that they have fixated on. Due to this, Fizz's only relationship prospects are other people who are already elite. While they can be shallow too, their similar experiences have shaped them to understand how hard it is to connect with others, and they would naturally bond over that and not feel any sort of fanaticism. Even worse than the fans who fixate on the caricature of Fizz are those who don't even appreciate the brand and image that he tries to put forth, and instead want to have it for themselves. This is of course the story of Creepso, the weird stalker who first seemed to love Fizz, but quickly turned against him when Fizz felt uncomfortable. This sort of narcissistic fan isn't really a fan at all, and instead values only how he thinks he could improve upon the brand if he was elevated to working with them. This adds another isolating factor to fame and hell, with people either being dumb consumerists who obsess over you, or just barely more intelligent narcissists who want to exploit you and then attack you when they don't get what they want. This is something VivziePop knows very well with the more negative parts of the fandom over the years, but it's something the entire crew has experienced on some level. Hell of a Boss is made with help from Brandon Rogers, who had his own rise to fame on and off YouTube, and a lot of the crew in general are very industry adjacent, people who dabbled with projects and possibilities of success within the industry, and got a real look inside at what's wrong with it before moving to more indie outlets that allowed them to achieve the success that they have now. The varying levels of success and interesting dynamics with fame and the industry are reflected in other characters in the show as well. Veronica is of course a famous pop star in Hell, perhaps one of the most famous people after icons like Fizzarolli and Angel Dust. These are the three biggest celebs we know of that aren't royalty, and while Angel Dust is an adult film star specifically, Fizz and Veronica both still have huge overlap with the sex industry of Hell. This is something that is essentially interwoven with Hell's overall culture, much more so than in real life, at least in the public sense. Veronica doesn't have some annual contest that she has to win, but her fame is dependent on her constantly holding the attention of people for as many years as she can, and if other succubus come along who start doing that better than her, she can just as easily find herself being a washed-up has-been. As a pop star, Veronica is not able to escape the will of the elites who have long-term goals that will go well beyond the span of her life as well. This involves shaping the culture of both Hell and Earth, as Veronica goes to perform on Earth as a human while her succubus lure in victims. While succubus do seem to enjoy this to some degree, it's being done with cross-dimensional travel in an attempt to corrupt humans, not just directly, but through the shaping of Earth's culture to be more sexual, each generation pushing the label just a little bit more to grow the market value of sexuality and the way it can be used to manipulate the masses. All Veronica can do is collect her paycheck and try to make it last as long as possible. Then of course there are Blitz and Barbie Wire, who reflect different sides of the same tragedy. Blitz caused the horrible accident discussed earlier that left Fizzarolli broken and damaged, but the show has hinted at it also taking the life of his own mom, and of course the life of his twin sister's mom that would mean. Barbie Wire was seemingly more famous than Blitz was at the family circus, but that doesn't seem to be saying much, and Fizz was ultimately the big star there, I would say. According to Veronica, however, she was famous, but ended up in rehab where you go when you stop being famous. This is a great example of how even with great fame on one platform, you can't always just go somewhere else and expect to find the same or even any success at all. Barbie Wire likely tried to get other work and maybe even had some opportunities, but if she did, she ruined them with her addiction issues, it would seem. Barbie Wire has the interesting experience of becoming somewhat famous, almost like a child star on a sitcom who never quite takes off after that, and yet is still known to the public. Finally, Blitz is interesting because he's the sort of escape from the industry. He never had great success at his own family circus, but he did try to pursue clowning and fame even after the accident he caused that burned it down. He found that he couldn't even compete with a robotic knockoff of Fizz when he became a clown at Lululand, and from there it looks like Blitz jumped into bodyguarding. This is something he insists he doesn't do anymore, but we definitely see him being a bodyguard to Stolas and now Fizz more than we see him doing missions on Earth. And honestly, I really like this. If Blitz's business got shut down, he could seriously just switch to being a bodyguard in Season 3, and we would have a lot of reason to keep interacting with the same cool side characters as well as new ones. Regardless, Blitz gave up on fame and began chasing different kinds of success and recognition, ones that ironically allow him to have more authentic and grounded interactions because of how well his business is going. While Stryker was definitely trying to overcompliment Blitz, it does seem like he really is finding more success overall with how well his business is doing. Blitz is a great example of someone just leaving the main industries as a whole and going indie and finding a lot of respect for it without having to worry about fans or fame. But there seems to always be some part of him that yearns for the spotlight and to prove that he can entertain people, such as we saw in the recent Hollywood episode. In this episode, we see that fame on Earth isn't really that different from Hell, with Blitz having rabid fans overwhelming him when they mistake him for a human celebrity. As I said before, Hell is the perfect location for this kind of commentary, because it forces us to look at the darker side of things we often have more positive ideas about, such as fame. At the end of the day, Fizz feels like everything he went through for the fame was worth it, at the very least because he got to meet Asmodeus. But if he haven't found that love and only got to experience the hollow industry through what Mammon provided for him, I can't help but wonder if he would be looking back right now and asking himself if it was worth it. The moment where he ran into Blitz in the street seemed to be rather important to Fizz, with him reflecting on how far he'd come, but without the love of his life to be the final prize, all he would have is the contract he hated so much that he finally just quit despite winning it for one more year. So without Asmodeus, how far would he have gone before he just cracked? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and don't forget to check out the Magical Girl Garnet Heart Show. See you guys there.